Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to the natural world. In connecting to this planet, we also connect to understanding, compassion, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate or above animals in nature, but a critical and integrated part of an active ecosystem? Through conversations with animal advocates, scientists, conservationists, and many others, we look to inspire a new awareness of how and why we connect to animals and nature in order to repair and restore our relationship to the natural world. Hey everybody, welcome back to Kindred. I will say we are kind of laughing right now because we've started recording this intro about 4 times, and I can't tell you how many times we edit out us clearing our throats, so we're both like hacking and coughing, of course, as soon as we start to record. And then of course my cat Dennis wants to get in the door, so it's always something, you know. Yeah, just another smooth day of recording, just as it goes. All good. Exactly. So I will say though, just to switch subjects to subscriptions, I was going to tell you that when we offer subscriptions, we're offering, when you subscribe, you get bonus content and early access to regular episodes, but in the bonus content, oh no, we're not going to be editing at all. So that's a little insight. So we don't edit, so you guys can hear us as we are, and it's you are welcome. You are welcome. So you are definitely welcome. And if you're not up for a live content through subscriptions through Apple Podcasts and iPhone only, you can also go to our website, and you can at kindredpodcast.co. You can buy me a cup of coffee. It's the yellow cup of coffee on the homepage on the bottom left-hand side of the page, or you can go to the donation page. But what I like about Buy Me a Coffee is it's very simple, and it's a one-time donation. And you get to choose how much you donate. With subscriptions, it's $4.99 a month. But this is just a sort of another way to support us, which I love. It's super easy. And I like that you can do like a one-time donation, which is also good. So thanks to everyone who is supporting us. We so appreciate it. And yeah, so on to our episode today. Somehow this conversation and the guest we speak to takes me back to watching the show Nature on PBS and reading National Geographic magazine as a child. Do you remember those shows and reading that magazine? I do, but more than that, I mean, one of my earliest memories is watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. It was on Sunday nights, and we would eat pizza, and I remember my knees would hurt, and I would watch Wild Kingdom, and it was so great just sitting there, because we weren't allowed to watch a lot of TV, but we were allowed to watch that, and because it was a Sunday night, and that show was really well done. And actually us talking about it has now made me want to go back and see if that is actually anywhere you can watch those, because they were really cool. I mean, can you imagine too, back in the 70s and 80s, the cinematography, like the what they had to do to get this right show together is just kind of amazing, actually. Yeah. Yes, we'll definitely have to look up Wild Kingdom. I'm sure there's issues with it, seeing as how when it was produced. I mean, we'd have to have trigger warnings now, probably, because there were sometimes things got a little bit, eaten, and Oh, well, that doesn't seem to have changed. I mean, these nature shows love seeing these poor little animals being. But hey, this is the world we live in. It's the circle of life. So yes, everyone has to eat. It's all good. We do the same thing. Right. What am I talking about? So yes, today, the reason we're babbling on and on about this is because we are speaking with Dr. Laurie Marker, who is the founder and executive director of Cheetah Conservation Fund, and we'll refer to them as CCF. And it was in the 70s that Dr. Marker started her work with cheetahs. So she's been working with them for a long time. And it's no wonder that CCF is the leader in cheetah conservation. And in 1990, Dr. Marker moved from the US to Namibia to start CCF when she was doing research and found that in the 80s, approximately 7,000 cheetahs had been captured and killed by the local farming communities. And she realized she either had to start CCF or the cheetah would cease to exist. I mean, they were on a catastrophic course. And, you know, I guess today, just as a comparison, I think there are only about 7,000 or 8,000 cheetahs living wild right now. So we wanted to talk to Dr. Marker, not only because the cheetah is such an exquisite species of cat, but because of the extreme situation Laurie found them to be in. And I feel like this is one of those species that I really think was headed for extinction. And she and CCF caught them like in the nick of time. And, you know, with their insecure numbers and the unique challenges they face, cheetahs are still not out of the woods, it doesn't seem like. So yes, I feel like it's such a critical conversation to have because of those things. And also there's just something about the cheetah. They are, I mean, she talked about them purring and just like, I mean, I think all cats do that, but they're just so beautiful and they face a lot of challenges. So I feel like we are really rooting for the cheetah over here. Let's head over to our conversation with Dr. Laurie Marker and hear the story of the cheetah from the best. See you at the takeaway. Dr. Marker, welcome to Kindred, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you and an absolute honor. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
If you would, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Okay. I'm Dr. Laurie Marker, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Cheetah Conservation Fund. And what we try to do is to keep cheetahs living free and in the wild in their ranges throughout Africa and trying to help cheetahs in all ways that we can.
So we'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to work with cheetahs and the origin story of Cheetah Conservation Fund. So tell us how it all came to be.
Well, I set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund in 1990, but I had started working with cheetahs back in the early 1970s. And I started working with cheetahs at a wildlife park in Oregon called the Wildlife Safari. And at that point, we really were one of the few places in the world that had cheetahs. And our cheetahs had recently come in kind of in the last shipment before the CITES and the Endangered Species Act went into effect in the early 70s. And when the park had just opened, and I joined the safari park as the taking care of the clinic and the rare species, and cheetahs came under my care. And I was fascinated with them, and I wanted to know everything there was. And as I wrote to people around the world, they basically wrote back and said, when you find out something about cheetahs, let us know. They have a short lifespan. They don't breed well in captivity. We're losing them in the wild, and good luck. And I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing. After people having had cheetahs knowing them for over 5,000 years, they were revered by kings, emperors, and princes. And at that point in the early 70s, really nobody knew very much about them. And so I kind of launched in to try to find out everything I could, develop the most successful breeding program at the Wildlife Safari in all of North America. And in the middle 1970s, I found myself in Namibia, finding out if a captive-born cheetah could learn how to hunt, because the potential would be, as zoos were developing breeding programs, that we would maximize the genetic diversity and eventually animals would go back out into the wild, and we needed to find out what that meant. And when I ended up in Namibia, I found that farmers hated cheetahs. They were killing hundreds of them, 800 to 900 a year. And I thought, somebody ought to take care of the cheetahs. I'll go tell them, whoever them is.
Right.
And so I did teach the cheetah, whose name was Kayam, how to hunt, but we both came back from Namibia. And I tried to let the people in the world know that the cheetah was being killed by farmers, livestock farmers. And I found out that nobody really cared. And that's why I set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund. And then there's a whole bunch of things in between that, like conducting a lot of research, finding out more about the genetic makeup of the cheetahs, developing research programs.
Right.
And then I moved to Namibia in 1991.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I'm sure we could talk about that for an hour alone, I'm sure. But it sounds like you caught the cheetahs, wow, just in the nick of time. My goodness. That is an astounding number of kills, 800 to 900. That is just staggering and terrifying, frankly.
Yes.
But before we get into the challenges and conflicts cheetahs come up against still today, I think it's really important to break down how cheetahs operate and what sets them apart from other big cats. Like, cheetahs seem to me unique in many ways, and I think it's a contributor to why cheetah conservation can be so challenging. So talk to us about what cheetahs need to survive and thrive.
Well, cheetahs need large landscapes. They have some of the largest home ranges of any animal on Earth. We did the groundbreaking research on this in the early days when I was in Namibia by collaring and tracking and moving and understanding how the cheetahs are. But they're a species that does not do well in protected game reserves. So 90% of the cheetahs, 80% to 90, are outside of protected areas, which makes it a little bit different. They are one of the big cats. They're the smallest of the big cats, and they're not powerful and aggressive. They're very fast. And in the game reserves, which are, again, not very large for them with that large home ranges, the lions and hyenas and leopards are all protected in those areas, and they actually compete. And so they push the cheetahs out of these protected reserves, and the majority of the cheetahs are found outside, which puts them overlapping with humans and their livestock. And so the biggest problem for cheetahs is human wildlife conflict, and why our programs directly work with the livestock farming communities and trying to find solutions so that cheetahs can live on the land with the people.
So it sounds like they need a vast landscape to operate, to raise their cubs, to hunt, and when I last talked to you, you were saying that females generally operate on their own, right? I mean, males have what I think you called coalitions, but because they need these vast spaces, that's why they don't, and these other large cats are pushing them out. So then what do, right? And then they encroach on human, population. Okay, interesting. So, and also, they're day hunters, aren't they? They're different than other cats, it seems like.
Right. They're hunting more in the early mornings and late afternoons. So they're diurnal, and again, they don't have good eyesight for night. They don't have night vision. And with that, though, during like a full moon, they can be active at night. But most of their hunting is dawn and dusk during the cool times of the day, because they have a lot of exertion in a quick run when they do try to make their kills. And their kills, many of them are actually then taken away by these other predators. So the competition is great. Right, so jackals take their prey away, even the obviously hyenas will, lions will, but they and so they have a different hunting time, early morning, but they do lose a lot of their kills to the other predators as well.
And I think because like females operate more singly, and so if it's just them and their cubs, they have no one to help them hold on to their prey. They have to pick, do I protect my cubs or do I keep this antelope or whatever? I mean, it's super challenging.
It is very challenging, and to lose that high percentage of their kills to these other predators is, I mean, just think of the energy that they put into that. Yeah, and so a female raising her cubs is, we call them super moms. I mean, they're just amazing if indeed they can succeed in growing up to begin with, and then having cubs, raising them. And they have to raise them up till they're about 18 to 22 months of age. And the cubs don't really start learning how to hunt until they're about 12 to 14 months of age. And then they're pretty sloppy on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrible that you think about all the exertion to actually get something killed and then she loses it. And then, wow.
So they have limited sprint time to kill. They don't have the best eyesight. They're doing this in broad daylight, so everyone can tell what they're doing. So everyone can tell, like, oh, there's a fresh kill. Let's go get it. And she's operating on her own, right? So we're already kind of talking about this, but let's now kind of get into the challenges that cheetahs face on kind of the bigger picture too. And it seems like you were saying, like, it's broken down into three major factors, right? So it's habitat loss, like we're talking about, human wildlife conflict, and then the third, illegal wildlife trade and trafficking. And let's get back to the habitat loss because, in terms of how cheetahs operate, like we're saying, the vast landscape, they ideally need this large habitat to survive. So that loss must be huge. And then that takes us to the human wildlife conflict, right?
Right, which overlaps because they're then out in these lands, and where they're living is some of the most arid landscapes in the world, basically. Yeah. They are a savanna, dry, arid land hunting animal, which is pretty amazing because they do maintain the health of these very arid ecosystems as well by them being on the ground. However, with that, the rural farmers throughout Africa are continually increasing in number and will do so, unfortunately. The human population in Africa at this point, I think 50% of the whole continent is under 19 years of age. So there is still going to be a huge exponential population growth. And from that, most of the people are, again, very, very poor. So we have not done a lot, I'm going to say, in a global world to really address the needs of Africa. And it not only affects the cheetah, it's going to affect all of these iconic and amazing wildlife species. But the cheetah being pushed out, they're then on these landscapes where there are people and their livestock. And much of the lands are overgrazed. In Namibia, what we do is we work very closely together with our government and other NGOs on developing and working with what are called conservancies. And these conservancies are where the communities are managing the lands, but they're managing them also for the wildlife and to the benefit for their ecosystems with wildlife, but as well as providing livelihoods through aspects like of ecotourism. And so what we're trying to do is, look at this model. Namibia is just an amazing model. I have to say that Namibia, being there since its independence over the last 33 years and watching Namibia grow and develop with our wildlife and our communities has been very, very interesting in helping develop these community-based conservancy programs have seen a benefit to our communities in Namibia. We're now trying to actually take that model into many of the other regions where the cheetahs are found. Kenya has developed some very good conservancy initiatives. We're now working out of Somaliland, which is where the illegal wildlife pet trade is, trying to help them in developing wildlife national parks, but also conservancies to really help the communities live in harmony. And so from this, you want to look at reduction of livestock, maybe value added, and I can talk a little bit more about what we've done around the value added with livestock, and then also to make sure that there's enough grazing land so that there's wildlife. And then if you've got wildlife, the predators can have the wildlife, and then that maintains the biodiversity within the systems. Right. And then the farmers are protecting their livestock, which is what we do from Cheetah Conservation Fund, is we teach and work with the farmers to develop good livestock management so they're not losing livestock to predators or disease. And disease oftentimes goes hand in hand then losing them to predators because you've got a weak or sick animal and the predator is the one that's picking those off. But you have to take care of your livestock, and that's a global thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm mentioning this because it's close to my heart, but you also have an Anatolian breeding program. And I say that because I've had 2 Anatolians, so I love that.
Oh, great.
Is that another part of like your education, or sort of like intervening and helping these farmers out? Yeah.
Very much. We started the breeding program for the Anatolians and Kangal dogs, and it's a Turkish breed of dog that's been used for about 5,000 years in Turkey, obviously. And we set up the program in 1994 with a handful of dogs, and have brought more breeding dogs in. We very carefully managed the breeding, but we have bred and placed nearly 800 of these dogs in the last over 25 years. And it's been amazing to see how we have grown this project. And we've not only been working in Namibia, but we've also helped develop programs in South Africa and Botswana and East Africa, but also around the world. Here in America, people have learned a lot from what we've done. And we've monitored and published everything that we do. We see between a 80 to 100% reduction of livestock loss by farmers having the dogs, and not just to cheetahs, but to all the predators. So we love all predators.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, if you can learn how, it is amazing. These dogs are great. I mean, Kate, you have one, you know what they can do. They bark loudly. They actually stick with their flock. And we raise them up in our goat yard. So we do and are a working farm in Namibia. So I'm based on a very large working ranch, basically, where we not only have integrated wildlife, we're part of a conservancy, but we practice what we preach in our model farm. So we have cattle, goats, sheep, and we have livestock guarding dogs. We use guarding donkeys. We have good management. And then we bring people in to learn about how they too can put these kinds of programs into effect. We also go out into the communities and we work with the farming communities to help them understand, because so much, especially with these rural communities, they have not actually been given any training or support. And so, you know, they don't know that, gee, you need to deworm your goats, or they get disease, you need to vaccinate them on an annual basis. And no, they kind of missed a lot of that. In Namibia, it's getting, you know, better and better, but we've now in Namibia worked with over 45,000 farmers, rural farmers. And we've now taken this program also up into Somaliland at this point, where we work in 2 ends of Africa, from the very southern west part to the Horn of Africa, which is in the northeast of Africa. And we've taken all of our programs and translated them into different languages, and are doing now extensive training in these other cheetah range countries as well.
That's incredible. Just incredible. I love that. And I love the example with the Anatolians and the Kangals, because it's such a natural way to balance this issue. And they're just the sweetest dogs, not to mention they're gorgeous, and I'm obsessed with them, of course. But so just to talk a little bit about the illegal wildlife trafficking issue, I have heard, and this is something I want to talk about because it could be completely false, but I feel like people think this, that cheetahs are what you might call like tameable, or some people are like, oh, well, they can be domesticated. And when you and I are talking about it, it's like, well, taming is a conditional behavior modification, right? And domestication is actually like generations of genetic modification. So it's not that they can be domesticated. Do the cheetahs have a nature that does make them more tameable? Is this true, and more easily trafficked then?
Well, it is. I mean, they are, again, the smallest of the big cats. And because they're the fastest of all land animals, you know, they can go up to, 60, 70 miles an hour. Everything that would be heavy on them has gone away. So they don't have like big teeth, because the roots of the canines would go up into their nasal passages. And so they've reduced. And so they've got very small teeth. They don't have sharp claws that come out. Their claws have adapted to act like cleats for traction and running to help them run so fast. So they don't, they don't have anything really powerful and dangerous. And I think that's one of the things that makes them more easily tamed. They purr like a cat, and if you get them as tiny cubs, they do tame down. Well, all of the big cats, any cat, if you get it as a cub, can tame down. But then these don't grow up and be big and dangerous like lions and tigers can. The cheetah is an animal that believes in flight versus fight. And so it would just as soon turn around and run away than it would come after you. And so I think those are the aspects that is why they've been loved to near extinction for close to 5,000 years. I think when the pharaohs found that they were easily tamed, they brought them in, and next thing you knew, the people throughout Europe were using them for a sport called coursing, that they would actually tame them down and take them out and turn them loose on a herd of antelope. And then the cheetah is exhausted. They're a sprinter and only can run fast for a short distance. They catch their prey, and then they would get a bite of that, and then they get put back into the stables where they were kept. But they did not breed, and that's why they kept thinning them out from the wild. And then the people started realizing at some point, I'm not quite sure at what point, that they could become a pet. And I'm going to say probably over the last 20 years or more, people have started realizing that they can, and they've been pulling them out of the wild. And over the last 15 years, it's when we've realized those issues. And most of it is as a status symbol going into very rich environments, primarily in the Arab Peninsula. And I don't think anybody, again, understood the impact of this. And as we started getting involved and learning about it, and also being promoted on social media, that we were finding about 200 to 300 animals a year going into this illegal wildlife pet trade.
Wow.
And for every one cub that made it into the trade or on social media, probably 4 or 5 of them die en route. And if the animal does make it into the pet trade, they only have a lifespan for like a year or 2 because they don't know how to take care of them. At that point, they found that they're cute, they purr, and then they go back and get more. So we're trying to stop that trade at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, that's awful.
It is.
It has been horrific.
Like they don't have enough problems as it is, and this is like, you know, with baby chimps and so many animals are dealing with this. But you know, so I want to switch gears at this time because we're almost starting to talk about this, like why are there so few cheetahs? But I also wanted to touch on this fascinating bit I read on your website, cheetah.org, about genetic diversity in cheetahs and the term evolutionary bottleneck, and how this bottlenecking, since I guess the Ice Age, you'll explain, it impacts the health and sustainability of their species. But can you explain that to us? What is this evolutionary bottlenecking with cheetahs?
Well, they escaped the Pleistocene extinction, which is pretty amazing. I mean, they had worldwide distribution, and they actually escaped the extinction, where here in North America, for instance, a lot of the large mammoths, we had sloth bears, and a variety of other, you know, big cat species, and they actually went extinct during the Pleistocene extinction. And it looks like the cheetah survived it, and from very, 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 very few numbers, and we don't even know what that looks like, but tracing it back genetically shows that they all came from a very small group of animals, spread themselves back out throughout Africa and Asia, and each of them carry a very limited gene pool. So that's what that pretty much means. And so then when the populations become smaller, that limited gene pool gets smaller and more reduced. And that then affects their overall health, from not only reproduction, so we see about 70 to 80% abnormal sperm. It affects them disease-wise, that if they see a virus, that when they look all the same genetically, that virus goes through them and they all are affected in a similar way. So
Right.
those are some of the problems facing them when you lack genetic diversity.
Right, right. And so you have this lack of genetic diversity, and then you have interbreeding issues, I would think. And then, then again, we're back to the habitat, loss of habitat, forcing them together. And then, so it's these like recurring health issues that are going to come up and the physiological impairments. And then, it just kind of goes on and on. And I feel like is that where, because you had mentioned earlier, breeding programs, and that must be vital to introducing genetic diversity then.
Well, it's maximizing the genetic diversity that's there. And what we say, we never want a cheetah to die or without passing its genes on. And that's why we need to stop the pet trade. That's why we have to stop the farmers from killing the animals in the wild. And then what we need to do is to continue developing programs that allows them living in the wild to have gene flow pass through. In captivity, what we try to do is to maximize the animals that are in captivity so that the genes that are in the captive population continue and not drop out. And so there is a breeding program here in North America. There's one in Europe. And from that, then it's working a little bit back and forth to even maximize those genes across the continents. But most of the cheetahs have come in captivity from very similar areas. And so there's not even a lot of diversity within our captive populations. There's about 1,800 animals living in captivity in about 300 facilities in the world. I manage what's called the registry or the stud book of the cheetahs, and then work together with the species survival programs in the continents to make sure that they're maximizing whatever genes that are there.
Yeah.
But we are looking at these captive animals potentially serving even a greater purpose and potentially coming back into the wild eventually.
Well, and I hear that you are on that. So you're celebrating a 1 year anniversary of reintroducing cheetahs to India. Is that right?
That is right. Namibia gifted India the first 8 cheetahs. And the cheetahs in India became extinct in the 50s. And India has worked hard at trying to bring the cheetahs back. Bringing a species back from extinction is way harder than losing it to begin with. But I have to tell you how hard it is on the ground to keep them living free and in the wild still where they are living. So we need to keep those animals that are wild. And then taking over other continents, we want to. And when India said this would be, they really wanted to be involved in it. We've been dealing with this project for, over probably close to 15 years, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the amount of research that's gone into it and where the animals could go and finding the reserves and, getting the communities involved and training the rangers. It's been a very, very long process. And then a year ago, we took the first 8 cheetahs in. And then in February of this year, the South African government donated or gave another 12 cheetahs. Okay. And then with that, it has been bringing them in, quarantining them at different points, putting them in large bomas. They were wild animals, but getting them back onto the prey base that is different, and they adapted well to the Indian food. It was just fine.
I love it too.
But it is, there's been a lot of hype around it, especially India has such a verbose media, which has highlighted every step of the way. But we have had some losses, but we had anticipated that. Right. And we've done a lot of training with the Indian rangers, the veterinarians. I had staff on the ground for the last 10 months working directly with the Project Cheetah team there. And so we are looking at year 2, which is, we hope, going to be easier than year 1, because we did all learn a lot. But overall, we believe that we've had good success, and we've had reproduction, although we lost a couple of the cubs, but
Yeah.
It just has shown that we can, we've just got to keep plugging away at this.
And it seems like it's the perfect time to, I mean, you guys have been working these programs for years and years, and it's working. And I mean, if it's going to be successful, it's going to be through you guys. So I wish you all the best of luck with.
Thank you. Thank you.
Things do just take decades to be organized and implemented, and then it's going to be decades longer before it's you'll probably feel comfortable saying it's successful type thing. I mean, it's a process. So
10 years, we'll see.
Yeah, in the first year, probably in a lot of ways is the hardest, because you're starting from nothing, and to keep and have all that stuff that you have to keep there to help them. I mean, hopefully year 2 is just a smoother, and more reproduction and more thriving and more implementation of all this information that you've gathered. But wow, that must be very nerve-wracking. Keeping your fingers crossed that it all goes well. Yeah.
It's been a long year. I mean, again, I'm on the ground in now 3 major areas, from the hard line in Somaliland, where we're trying to stop the trade going on, because in Somaliland it's at the Horn of Africa, where the cats are coming up from Ethiopia as well as Somalia and Somaliland, but that's the closest crossover the Aden Gulf to Yemen, which is again not in a good way within the country because of the civil war that's going on, and then they are traded and transferred up into Saudi and the UAE. Working together with those governments, though, we are trying to, the governments have put good laws into place. We're now on the ground trying to get, underground communications and understanding. And that's what we're doing in Somaliland and Ethiopia, is working together between the 2 countries to train the police force, the communities through awareness, to know that it is against the law to be taking these animals out. And then on the other hand, working with the rural pastoralists on good livestock management and trying to assist them in livelihood. So that's like one front line we're on.
Right.
And then in Namibia, we're trying to stop the farmers constantly from killing the cheetah because of looking at their livestock. And even though the cheetahs don't catch that much livestock, if you even see a cheetah on your land, they go after them. And that's where the livestock guarding dog program has played such an important role. And we've got cats collared. We've got what's called an early warning system, that we then go in and if the cat crosses over certain lands, you can go in and tell the farmers that they're there and to be more vigilant. And then, these issues with India, and we are going to be looking at other areas that want cheetahs back into their countries and in different continents. And so there is a lot that's going to be done and continue to be done. And we never pointed out that there's only about 7,000 cheetahs left in the world today. Right.
Exactly. So it sounds like we're talking of, you have cheetahs here and you have cheetahs there and you have cheetahs over there, but that's a tiny number to be working with.
Very, very small. Southern Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, we have the last large populations, which we have maybe 1,500 in Namibia, and Botswana may have about the same. And that is nearly 50% of all of the populations.
Right.
East Africa, obviously, Kenya and Tanzania still are maintaining their populations in their reserves. The Serengeti has maybe 250 to 300 animals, which is a very critical area. But we are looking at other places where cheetahs potentially can come back into. But with that, with habitat use and where you would put an animal, we have to make sure that the people around and the communities are well versed in understanding how to live in harmony with the cheetah.
That's right. Yeah, you have 2 major issues. Like, you're trying to educate people, which takes a while. That takes a while to get people to understand and to be creative about these different ways of managing, like the Anatolian project. And then their numbers are still dwindling. So you're trying. You must not sleep very much. You must not.
No, I'm trying to share this with everybody. So I do hope that there's people listening who might want to get involved and help. We do take volunteers. We've got lots of students that assist us. we've got, lots of undergraduates that come in from around the world, from Namibia. Great interns. We work very closely with the universities there, but also we have volunteers that come in from all walks of life. Older people who are interested in wildlife and ways of helping. And I'm always looking for help up in Somaliland as well, which it is not Somalia when you say the word Somaliland.
Yeah, no, not Somalia, Somaliland, yes.
It's a breakaway, and it is a democratic country that is just not recognized by anyone in the world. But we've developed an entire reserve now up there in the last couple of years. So we've taken our model from Namibia and have had to, we have 92 cheetahs that have been confiscated in Somaliland right now. And we've had to develop about 800 hectares, which is, I think close to 400 or 500 acres of land that we've had to develop for these cats. They're in large areas like we do in Namibia, between 5 and 20 acre compounds. Just imagine what it would look like with 90 cheetahs. They're coming out our ears basically. But we've been able to provide really, really good facilities that we've been working on for 2 years to develop the center. And again, Somaliland is I didn't say this before, but it's the third poorest country in the world. And so I've had to bring in everything to build the center. So containers full of wire to build our pens.
Yes.
We've developed a veterinary clinic. We've got to bring in all of our medicines from either Namibia or the United States. It has been really a challenge to try to stabilize that population. But then we obviously don't want animals in captivity. We want to keep them living free and in the wild. But
you're really truly building it from the ground up. And then you've also got to be working, because really what it comes down to in some ways, again, we're back to the habitat loss, which really means you're talking to governments. You're talking to people who, the population, like you said, is not growing. The demographic is it's like the general age is 19 or something you said. So it's sort of like, you need to get this land protected as early on as possible. And so it's loss of habitat, but then it's also dealing with government. And then if you're in Somaliland, a government that's maybe insecure and the world doesn't acknowledge. So, and then you're having to you must be fundraising every second you can. This is it's just so multi-leveled, and you might be the director and way up here, but you're probably helping put a brick in cement and, like you said, wire around. So it's just, these epic sort of undertakings that people like you, your whole life works. It's why we are just absolutely astounded by what you can do and how much you actually have been able to do.
But there's so much more, but we need to work really fast. Now, we're going to be holding a Global Cheetah Summit at the end of January, and we're bringing in the people who are a part of this, our partners that are looking at the habitat, the wildlife, the communities, and then the financing, because we really do need to get into a creative financing. And with the cheetahs living in the most arid landscapes, the aspects around climate change are also very damning at this point. And looking at what that means, because where the cheetahs are living and the people that they're living in are really not the ones that are causing the problems, but they're the ones that are being affected by the problems around climate change. And so from that, we're trying to look at putting the cheetah out as the icon for the arid landscapes and what this means and what it means to the people on the ground. But when you have a cheetah which has such huge home ranges, living in low densities over large areas, can really affect the biodiversity of these arid landscapes as well, which would then provide a better ecosystem for the communities living there. But we're layering this over with, I always say, how many people do you know want to be a poor, starving farmer in the middle of Africa? And I haven't found anybody who raises their hand and is just running to come over and be a poor, starving farmer.
Right.
The people that are out there, they do not want to be poor, starving farmers either, but they have not a lot of other opportunities. And so we're trying to also look at what those opportunities will look like. So we're looking at secondary industries like If you have goats, then why don't we make cheese? And that's one of the things that we do in Namibia, or soap or fudge. And these are also things that can be used for making money or feeding your family. Instead of just eating your goat, you can milk your goat and make cheese without even having a refrigerator. So those kinds of aspects I think are important. We've developed a real craft industry down in Namibia, and we're teaching some of these crafts also up in areas of Somaliland. And that's something too, we're trying to link those together with places like zoos who have a gift shop.
Yes, exactly. Where people will buy
so you have to be so practical and so creative all at the same time. Like I'm curious, Laurie, how many people actually do you have working with you on this? I'm curious.
Thank you. A very good question. In Namibia, our staff is wonderful. You remember we've been around for 33 years. We have a staff of over 150 people. And we've got educators on the out doing training programs with farmers, working with the livestock guarding dogs, ecologists. We have a genetics lab, a veterinary clinic, our rewilding program. We do have orphan cats there at the center as well, our goats and our dairy. And we have a big habitat restoration project in Namibia too, where we actually harvest thickened thorn bush and we make a fuel log, like a Duraflame type log, without additives. It's an eco log. And we've now scaled this up. Half of Namibia basically is thickened thorn bush caused from overgrazing in an arid landscape. And we see this kind of a problem throughout the cheetah's range. And it has to do with this overgrazing of the livestock. And so what we're doing
farmers.
And so we're affecting and looking at that too, because that then has become we're putting people to work, and we're making something else, an industry of biomass electricity. We're doing a lot of different things. We're looking at biomass feed for livestock. So we are doing a lot of different aspects of research. Now up in Somaliland, we have a staff of now close to 25 people working, not only from animal care and veterinarians on the ground. We've got a staff of about 12 people on the ground working directly with the animals, and then a support staff taking care of, imagine we need 100 goats a week just to feed the cheetahs that we have there. And then a
breeding program.
We buy them from the rural communities, so they get money. But we also have a team of people on the ground doing the farmer training work, working with the communities, looking at livelihoods and awareness, as well as doing camera trapping throughout these areas now in Somaliland. Of course, we've got a whole camera trapping program we do down in Namibia. We've got scat detection dogs, which go out and find scat that can come into our genetics lab where we can do DNA. And it's very extensive. And then here in North America, we have a team of about 8 people, and this is the development team who help us with our social media and our e-newsletter that goes out and how to share. And then also, this is the lifeline, because America although we have foundations in other countries in the world, America actually is the leader in the world in helping nonprofit and support of conservation programs. And conservation doesn't get a lot in the philanthropy arena. It's very, very low, and we really need more help with that as well.
Well, and if you get on, I just want to let people know, if you get on your cheetah.org, your website is fantastic, and you can see these programs. You can look at the volunteer program. You can go and stay. You can donate. So I urge people to get on and check it out. Obviously, you need help from the top to the bottom.
Absolutely.
But just switching gears a little bit, Laurie, like we ask all our guests this sort of esoteric question. It's the thoughtful one, but it's like from the heart, like, from your perspective, why is this conversation that we're having so important? And what new awarenesses, as far as like the human-animal connection, does this create for us?
Well, the cheetah is pretty special, and most people don't know oftentimes even what a cheetah is. They hear about it, they know it's the fastest land animal, but to be aware that the fastest land animal is running its most important race, and that is for its own survival. And most people will not have the opportunity of knowing a cheetah, meeting a cheetah, seeing a cheetah, understanding the important value it has for the ecosystem, because they maintain biodiversity when you have a top predator. Because the cheetah not only is feeding itself, it's feeding all the other wildlife species that are on the ground with it. From the jackal, for instance, that if the cheetah is feeding it by having made a kill of wildlife, then the jackal's not going to be in your goat yard trying to catch your goats. And those are the circular things that most people don't understand. So an animal like a top predator plays a very key role. It's feeding the insects and the other small carnivorous mammals that need to have a top predator there on the ground, from even the vultures and different of the birds and the insects, all together rely on a top predator. And to see an animal that is as beautiful, elegance, speed and elegance is what we say about the cheetah, in such a crisis, and the fact that this crisis is a human caused problem, one of which we do not know how to live in harmony. And we like to think that protected areas are great, but protected areas are only a piece of the solution, because the cheetahs taught us that it can't do and live in those areas. And so with that, we need to learn to live together with wildlife. And I think that that's one of the things the cheetah has taught me most, that it's not about living in the box in the game reserve. It's learning and teaching people that we can live in harmony together. We just need a plan, and then we need to make that plan happen. And behavior change does take a long time. I've been at this with the Cheetah Conservation Fund for over nearly 35 years. And from that, I have seen a big change in Namibia, and I continue and want to see changes everywhere. But we need to jumpstart that and scale up so that we don't have to start from ground zero anymore, where I started so long ago. We can put these programs into effect fairly rapidly. And I hope to see cheetahs grow throughout the continent where they're living. That with that, I hope to see the communities also get out of poverty and learn the value of healthy ecosystems that they're a part of.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think it's, we're talking about the sort of the reciprocity that humans and animals can have. And there is something about the cheetah. They are so beautiful. They're like supermodels of the cats to me. I mean, they have these beautiful faces, and there's like a sweetness and a kindness in their face that they have smaller heads. They're, I don't know, there's something about that animal that is just, I think it really does pull on that. You want to protect them because they are vulnerable because of everything we've talked about, the way they are set up. So thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us, just taking us into this world of cheetahs. Like you were saying, that so many of us don't get to sort of steep in, and we really appreciate your time. Again, please check out the website, cheetah.org. Is there any other way to follow you that's helpful?
Well, we do have a Facebook page, and I think it's Cheetah Conservation Fund.
Yeah.
And so do please look at what we do, and we try to continually share with everybody what our programs are about, what we're doing. But again, you are the lifeline really to the survival of this species. And so we do need support, friends, and help. And that's what I'm doing right now. Is I travel through the United States a couple times a year and lecture and fundraise and make new friends. And so we want new friends. And if you want to join our Cheetah team, Cheetah family, please stay in touch and do go to our website, cheetah.org. And we're a small family, and we're a very hardworking group of scientists, conservationists, and really able-bodied people who want to make a difference on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the size of your your organization. You have done phenomenal, incredible work, and it's really an inspiration. We will definitely spread the word. Thank you again. Please be safe. Good luck in your travels, and hopefully we'll be able to touch base another time.
Great. Well, we welcome you to come and visit us in Namibia too. So
Okay.
anybody who wants to take a trip, Namibia is the safest place probably on earth. And it's got some of the most beautiful, beautiful wildlife. And we welcome people to always visit. So,
all right. Well, we'll see you there then. Thanks for the invitation. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to The Takeaway. One thing that really hit me talking with Laurie was that, of course, she loves the cheetah, right? And she connected to this animal for a very specific reason. And, she saw a need that she needed to fill. And I think that's part of what drove her to start CCF. But what I realized is that people who work in science and conservation aren't doing this specific work because they love the species or think they're really special. I mean, yes, that's part of it, but I think what's happening is they're doing it because they have a deep understanding of how critical these animals are to maintaining a healthy working ecosystem. And without this specific species, the knock-on effect is very real and dangerous for us all, right? It's like,
yes, right. It threatens the whole balance. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if I'm making myself clear. My point.
No,
clear.
you definitely are. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, sure, she loves a cheetah, and sure, people, love whales, but it's actually this realization of like, you see something that if the species ceases to operate in the ecosystem they do, that ecosystem is going to be in real trouble. Serious.
No, right. Yep. And that the peril that they're in is indicative of a deeper, bigger, broader issue than just that one animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're drawn to certain things and work in our life for very specific reasons. And I think there's a little bit of mystery and sort of magic to that too. But it really hit me talking with her that, thank goodness too for people like Dr. Marker who are willing to dedicate absolutely every part of their life to saving these species. So I just, and it's also like the fact that we kind of been saying more and more that conservation is really about people and not a species ecosystem, right? So if you want to find out more about Dr. Marker and her story and CCF, you can go to their website, cheetah.org. It's a fantastic website with loads of information, and it will answer almost all of your questions. And I think you can learn about how to support, how to volunteer, the whole history, their story. And you'll also be able to find all the links to this episode in our show notes on our website, kindredpodcast.co. and where you can also subscribe to the newsletter, and follow CCF on Instagram. They've got a very active account, and there's lots of really good content there. You can also find us at the Kindred Pod on Instagram and Facebook. And if you especially like this episode, please rate and review us, and because it helps us get more exposure, which gives our guests and animals like cheetahs more exposure. So please share this episode, and because it's a way to support the incredible work and organizations like CCF. So thanks again to Dr. Laurie Marker, and thanks everyone so much for listening, and lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.